What's up, my bearded rose, bearded Maine-iac here, Week 9 NFL Power Rankings. If you are new to the series, I'll just do a quick rundown. Biggest gainer on the left, biggest loser on the right. This video is just, the screen's going to stay the same the whole time to keep the upload time shorter by reducing the memory of the video itself. It's more of a podcast style, so I hope you guys don't mind. This is also recorded before any trades have been made after the Damon Harrison to the Lions trade. So if there's anything that happens after or before this technically uploads, I'm just letting you know when this is getting recorded so it doesn't conflict with any of the results, I should say. If your team deserves to be lower or higher, give me like one reason in the comment section down below, whether it be like the Redskins with their run defense or maybe the Vikings with their receiving core, who knows. Anyway, at number 49 we have the 49ers, one of the biggest losers in the week, dropping 2 spots from where I previously had them at 30. Lost to the Cardinals, not much else to say. Honestly, this is a lost season for them. I think they should probably trade away Pierre Garçon, go for the number 1 seed, and try to get as much value as they can going into next year. It sucks because they had a lot of promise going into the season, but due to some injuries, due to some poor play, they just put themselves in a bad position. And then you have the Arizona Cardinals at number 31, gaining 1 spot with a win over the 49ers. They were down 15-3, came back to win 15-18, I believe. Impressive performance by Josh Rosen. Christian Kirk looks better. This team does kind of look like it's on the upward trend, but do they trade away a player like maybe Buchanan or something like that to get a little bit more value to solidify the team next year? Who knows? Offensive line needs to play better, though. But that's standard with most teams' issues. And then you have the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders at number 30, gaining 1 spot as well. They may have lost, but Derek Carr had a solid game. And even though they are without Marshawn Lynch, the run game isn't as bad as I thought it would be. It's not as good, but it's not as bad. Do they trade stars like Bruce Irvin and stuff like that before the trade deadline? I am not sure, but as long as they have Derek Carr, they at least deserve to be above the 49ers and Cardinals. And then you have the Bills at number 29. One reason why they are above the other 3 teams is that defense is, I believe, a top 6 unit. They did incredible even against the Patriots. They did give up a lot of air yards, but they definitely choked up the run game and made it so hard. Linebacking core looks solid. Secondary looks solid. Defensive line looks solid. The only issue, that offense, most of it looks like a dumpster fire. Zay Jones and Kelvin Benjamin do show a lot of promise together. Maybe another weapon or 2 to help out that offense would be better. I think LaShawn McCoy needs a better complementary piece than Chris Ivory. I'm not saying Chris Ivory is bad. I'm just saying having 2 old dudes in the backfield with similar running styles is not necessarily good. I think they should bring in someone who's more of a scat back, receiving back kind of person, like a James White, to help out that offense a little bit more. And the fact that Stanton was at quarterback kind of shows where this team is, at least at the quarterback position with Allen out. Makes it kind of look like they should have not traded A.J. McCarron at the beginning of the year, especially when your best backup was Nathan Peterman. And then you have the Giants at number 28. It is yet to be seen if Janoris Jenkins or Landon Collins will be on the move, but if they are, it will be interesting to see what the Giants get back and who they trade to because of conference rivalries and stuff like that. Some people let that get in the way of getting the better deal. That offense is being held back by the offensive line. I personally want to thank the New York Giants for taking Nate Solder out of New England so I don't have to worry about him every week from now on, and you guys have to suffer the consequences. The offensive line is to the point to where, as good of a talent as Saquon Barkley is, as good as Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram are, if Eli Manning is constantly getting hit and Saquon can't move the ball whatsoever, the Giants are not going to be able to win. That offensive line is absolutely terrible. And the one thing that sucks most about it is you can't trade Nate Solder. He's like the top paid left tackle, and he's terrible. No one's going to want that. So maybe at the end of the year you get him to restructure his contract, take a pay cut, something like that, because god damn he's bad. At least this year. And then the Browns at number 27 fired Hugh Jackson, fired Todd Haley, but I actually think that improves the team. Greg Williams, as much as a checkered past as he has with the Bountygate scandal, is a good defensive coordinator. He knows how to work the defense, and that is the better side of the football as of late. And I think the consistency and the lack of infighting, I guess you could say, from now on will help the offense and the defense gel a little bit more. There's a lot of young talent on this team, so having a distraction like that could be too much for them without a ton of veteran leadership there. They do have people like Jarvis Landry and Jamie Collins, but, well, they might actually not have Jamie Collins much longer because he might be on the trade block. But still, I think with Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley gone, a little bit more consistency is more of what we should see, especially with Nick Chubb. Asking him as a rookie to take over the running back duties after you trade Carlos Hyde, when you have Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson constantly fighting, is also that could stunt his development almost as much as it could stunt Baker Mayfield's development. So I'm glad that situation sorted out. I can't wait to see who they hire at the end of the year, because that could be very interesting, because they have a lot of capital and a lot of talent. So who's going to want that job? And then you have the Jets at number 26, played a tough game against, I believe, the Bears. They look decently solid on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. Weakest unit to me personally would probably be the wide receiver. So they could make a move today and possibly get a wide receiver to shore up and try to sneak into the wild card chase, because they're not out of it yet. I mean, if anybody is out of it by now in the AFC, it's the Bills and the Raiders, and honestly, that's about it right now. The Browns are technically probably out of it, but, the Jets still have a chance. Darnold is solid. And then you have the Colts at number 25. Andrew Luck looks really good, but Marlon Mack coming back to this team is the spark I thought he would be originally. They're gaining slowly. I believe it was last week where he gained. Yeah, last week the Colts moved up one spot. They moved up 2 spots this week. So that's a 3-spot gain in the basement, which is actually a lot bigger than it looks. And I'm impressed. The offense looks solid. They're another team who could grab an offensive weapon on the trade deadline. I don't know what they would have to give up, but if they can shove that offense, they could literally chase for the division. The Texans aren't that far ahead of them, although the Texans do look like the superior team anyway. And then you have the Bucs at 24 after a weird loss, which Jameis Winston threw 4 interceptions, got benched, replaced by Ryan Fitzmagic, because that's how he played, was magical in that game. Came back from a big deficit, tied the game, lost by a field goal, then named Fitzpatrick the starter for next week. So they could be in a situation to where they make a surprise trade and maybe trade Jameis Winston to the Jaguars or something like that for a defender. Who knows? Because Blake Bortles is shit. But the Bucs do stay because they lost to a relatively good team in the Bengals. They came back. They looked solid. Mike Evans had a monster game. That's not to be underestimated either. They have the Detroit Lions losing 1 spot in a tough loss to the Seahawks. Seahawks looked really good as well. That's why they're on the left, but I'll get to that in a minute. Damon Harrison is going to get more acclimated to the system. He should start helping them produce in the upcoming weeks. Matthew Stafford looks interesting. I don't know if Golden Tate's going to be traded. The fact that they're fielding calls for him makes this a really interesting move. Kenny Golladay didn't have necessarily a good game, neither did Johnson rushing-wise. Kerryon Johnson, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But he had a decent receiving game as a running back. A little bit more consistency this team needs before it starts having continued success, but they look like they're on the right track. And then you have the Cowboys getting 1 spot to 22 off a bye week. Like I said previously, this is more of a result as the Lions losing. But I'm excited to see this week how Amari Cooper helps this team. And you have the Broncos losing 1 spot to 21 after a tough loss to the Chiefs. They were in this game relatively late, which is actually impressive considering Case Keenum's not that good. Do they trade Demaryius Thomas? That will be interesting to see where this team is going, because a lot of people still consider Denver as a wild card contender, even at this point in the season. And that defense is always going to look really good with Chubb and Von Miller on that defensive edge. And I love Phillip Lindsay this year. Phillip Lindsay, very underrated running. Well, probably maybe not underrated anymore, but he's a very capable running back. And I like how the Broncos got him. I like Royce Freeman. I like that combination. A little bit more consistency from Case Keenum, and this team could be a contender to defeat anybody they face. Then you have the Falcons at number 20, cracking the top 20 again for the first time in a while off a bye week because they couldn't lose. Like with the Cowboys, it was more of a product of them having a bye week and the Broncos losing. This is a tough, muddled group back here. I do like the Falcons' offense, but the defense is questionable at best. They're starting to get some people back from injury, which is really good for them. Do they make a move at the trade deadline? This is very interesting indeed, because they are, I believe, behind the Panthers and the Saints. But with a move, maybe a move on defense, do they trade for a Keanu O'Neal? Do they trade for a Landon Collins or somebody like that to shore up the defensive secondary? If so, this team could come back for a wild card in the NFC. It could be very interesting. And you have the Jags at number 19 dropping a spot. Lost to the Eagles again. Thank God I picked up Lambeau, though, in my fantasy team, because he's probably the only good player that can score for them. Carlos Hyde, after 1 week of being on the team, looked terrible. Bortles looked eh. I mean, I'm not going to knock Bortles too much, because it was better than his last game, but god damn, that team looked anemic at points in that game. Defense looked better, and that might be all they need to turn it around, but this is a team that I don't know if they're going to try to sell defensive talent to buy offensive talent or anything like that. I do think they need a little bit of help on offense if they're going to want to turn this around. I believe they are currently 3-4 or 3-5, something like that, and that is, you were just in the AFC Championship game, so that is a huge concern. I don't think it's an overnight fix, so they might go 2-1 in their next couple of weeks. But even if they go 2-1, that could, because teams have gone this bad before and had a hot streak to make the playoffs. So I'm not counting the Jaguars out of it. Their defense is capable of beating anybody, but a little bit more consistency is all I ask for. And then you have the Dolphins at number 18 dropping 2 spots. This team is that of an enigma to me. I watched them, and I still don't know what's going on. Kenyon Drake had a good game. Brock Osweiler was still at quarterback, I believe. And it should be interesting to see, but who's their lead back? Sometimes it's Kenyon Drake, sometimes it's Frank Gore. Consistency issues on the defense do bother me a little bit, but their defense is not bad. Well, it's not bad in the sense that it's Oakland Raiders bad or anything like that. Could improve, but they have had injuries, so that is understandable. A little bit more success, and this team could be poised for a wild card spot, but a couple more losses like they've had in the last few weeks could take them out of it. And you have the Titans at 17. I believe they had a bye week, so not much to say about them. Will they be buyers at the trade deadline? That could make it interesting in that division if the Titans are buyers. Seahawks gained 3 spots. Really good win for them. Russell Wilson, perfect passer rating. I believe only had like 14 completions on 14 attempts or something like that, which is incredible. He didn't need to do much more because that defense stepped up. The young athletes on that team stepped up. The running back, Chris Carson, stepped up. The Seahawks team is stepping up, which means they're stepping up the power rankings. Let's go. And then you have the Bears and Eagles. I'm going to say them both at the same time at 14 and 15, staying pat. One reason why is because in the middle of the pack right here, it's really clustered. And the Bears, although they beat someone, they beat the Jets. And Eagles, even though they beat someone, they beat the Jaguars. So the quality of opponent wasn't that necessarily great. The teams did look more consistent. No Khalil Mack for the Bears, and I believe the Eagles lost both offensive tackles during the game to minor injuries like that, MCL sprains or something like that. So both teams have injuries. They had relatively good games, good victories against okay teams, but still gonna need to see more consistency. I do like how Carson Wentz has been playing as of late. He is getting better. And then you have the Bengals at number 13. Currently one of the biggest enigmas of the NFL this season, just because 1 week they will ball out and 1 week they won't show up at all. And it's not just the offense or defense. It's typically both. Like 1 week the offense won't show up, the other week the defense won't show up, and it's kind of like I said, an enigma. Marvin Lewis should be fired at the end of the season because there's too much talent on this team to be this bad. And another reason why the Bengals lose, despite a victory, is the injury to, I believe, Carl Lawson, I think is his name. Huge blow to that defense. Gone for the year with a torn ACL, I believe is the report. It sucks. It sucks when you have one of your motors go down when you're struggling already. But they could turn it around, and they will be a team to definitely keep an eye out for. Then you have the Packers at number 12, dropping 2 spots. Not necessarily because they lost, because yes, they lost to the Rams in a very close game when they were in position to win it. I understand that, but one reason why I dropped them a little more than they normally probably would is because of Ty Montgomery. Internal locker room strife is a monster. It doesn't matter if one person starts being a diva, starts turning out, starts fucking ruining the season. It could be toxic to that environment. If I was Green Bay, I would immediately put Ty Montgomery on the trade block, send a signal to that team that this is not acceptable. If we tell you to kneel in the end zone and you run it out and fumble it, then guess what? You just lost your job. Will that continue into the next week against the Patriots? I'm not sure, but that is a huge concern. Even with Aaron Rodgers' leadership, if you have one player act like that, then that could lose you the game like it did last week. So hopefully that changes. Hopefully that turns around. Defense looked pretty solid against the Rams in the first. Actually, in the first half, that defense looked amazing. Second half, not so much. As much as I blame the loss on Gurley for that fumble on the return, it's almost equally on the defense, because on that play where Todd Gurley ran for a first down, stopped short of the end zone, if they would have stopped him before the first down marker, the Rams would have had to kick a field goal, and the Packers would have had roughly 20 seconds left to try to win the game, which would have still gave him a chance to win the game. But no, the defense didn't stop him whatsoever, and he got the first down, and the Rams won. Not going to knock him for that whatsoever. Being in the top 12 in the season at this point, despite a record like 3-3-1, is incredible. The Packers have had a really good season despite how they started, which is really good. The top 12 in this league are probably almost all playoff contenders. They could all, to me, they all have a relative chance of winning the Super Bowl. It's not a knock on the Packers whatsoever. It's more of a knock on Ty Montgomery. And then you have the Texans at number 11. Deshaun Watson playing really, really well as of late, and I love it. I love how well Hopkins has been playing as well. Lamar Miller's bouncing back, which is beautiful. That defense is playing better, which is beautiful. Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt are just an unfair pair. I love saying that, unfair pair. And they are, I've heard reports of them being interested in Demaryius Thomas. So if Demaryius Thomas gets traded to them by the time before this video goes up, I'm going to comment on it. I'm going to be so happy, because with Will Fuller going down, it was heartbreaking, and the Texans need a replacement for Will Fuller if they are going to be serious contenders. So hopefully they do make a move. I want them to. And then you have the Ravens at number 10, dropping 2 spots. Tough loss to the Carolina Panthers. One thing about really these teams back here about gaining 2, dropping 2, because the next few teams, you'll notice that pattern, is they're really close to each other. And typically all it takes is like 1 loss or 1 win, and there's movement, because these teams are all really talented teams. Ravens dropped 2 spots because of the inconsistency of Joe Flacco. He didn't play too well. That whole offense didn't play terribly well. And it's also a nod to the Carolina Panthers. Good job. But the Ravens defense, as good as it is, didn't really show up as well either. They held Cam Newton to a respectable amount of yardage. You could say respectable amount. And so forth, but they still lost. Flacco's going to have to be more consistent, and you know me, I love consistency. Then you have the Steelers at number 9. They beat the Browns. The offense looked better at times. Artie Burns being benched is interesting to see. Steelers could be buyers at the trade deadline. James Conner had a game. James Conner is a beast. That's one reason why they move up. Then you have the Vikings dropping 2-8 with a tough loss to the New Orleans Saints, who are one of the better teams in the league. It is tough, but still, you had the defense and you had the offense to beat them, and you just couldn't execute. Adam Thielen continued his streak of, I believe, 8 straight games of 100-plus receiving yards to start the season, but even he turned it over. Might have cost the Vikings a game in the long run, but hindsight is 20/20, and these are games they're going to need to win if they want to win the Super Bowl. And you have the Redskins at number 7, gaining 2 spots. Less than 200 passing yards yet again, which is a huge concern for this team, but that run defense looked amazing. That defense looks so good. Alex Smith, I believe, only has like 8 passing touchdowns on the season. Which you might think, what the fuck? 8 passing touchdowns for Alex Smith? That's not good. It doesn't need to be. He doesn't need to be better. This team is kind of like any Alex Smith team that I've watched, where they're not huge contenders every week. Like, they're not going to put up those numbers, but they're going to beat you. They're going to find a way to win. That's why I like this Redskins team. 5-2. A lot of people have them a lot lower on the power rankings, but you know, if you get it done and you know how to get it done and you keep getting it done, you should be rewarded for it. So I rewarded the Redskins with moving them up this week. And yeah, the Panthers at number 6, moving up a spot, about to crack the top 5, which is really good for them. Good win. Look in the last 2 weeks over the Eagles and the Seahawks. Not Seahawks, but the Ravens. I said the wrong bird. I apologize. I saw the TV and I said Seahawks instinctively. Panthers, not much else to say. Cam Newton had a really solid game, especially when you consider it against the Ravens defense. The defense also looked pretty solid as well. If they can continue this into next week, they could crack the top 5. As soon as someone slips, the Panthers could be there to snap it up. And if the Saints slip or suffer an injury, the Panthers could be right there to snatch the NFC South from them. That's going to be a division race that I am nibbling on every week, paying attention to every second of it. Then you have the Chargers at number 5, bye week. So, not much else to say there. Got another chance to get healthy. I don't know if Bosa's going to be back next week, but I hear he's progressing well, so that's good. Top 5 teams, spoiler alert, did all stay the same. They all had good wins, so there's not much else to say about that. Patriots at number 4, although Tom Brady didn't have a passing touchdown, I believe he had 300 and something passing yards, which is good. Ran for 8 yards. About broke a hip trying to block a linebacker, Lorenzo Alexander, but it was key to first down. And when players like that, or Cordero Patterson rushing the ball or stuff like that, when players see other players play with heart, sometimes playing with heart, even though you're not as good as the other player, you can still win. And to me, that's what the Patriots have been doing. Brady making a block to help Edelman get the first down is a key example of a player doing something he's probably not really comfortable with to help the team get the victory. And the pick 6 for the Patriots for the first defensive points, I believe, in 40 games, which was the longest drought in the NFL, so good for them. But they face a tough Packers team next week, so this could be very key to deciding the hierarchy in the NFL in the upcoming weeks, this one game coming up. Then you have the Saints coming off a good win over the Vikings, staying pat at number 3, like I said. Kamara didn't have a great game. Drew Brees didn't have a great game either. He had 100-something passing yards, I believe, and 1 touchdown. That's not great for Drew Brees standards, but they got the win. Defense stepped up. I believe they had a pick 6 as well. I'm not sure. And it's interesting because seeing this team win like that over the Vikings and have Drew Brees not have a great game scares the fuck out of me, because if Drew Brees has a great game, how do you beat this team? That's one of the three teams in the NFL. If this player has a great game, how the hell do you win? And with saying that, the other team that's like that, the Chiefs at number 2. A lot of people have them leapfrogging the Rams, but the Rams are undefeated, so I can't do that. Rams are number 1, so with Chiefs Rams, I will go like this. Chiefs offense looks absolutely huge. Could they trade for Landon Collins? Very possible. It would make this team a lot better. There's not much else to say about this offense. Holy shit. Patrick Mahomes. Damn. And then the Rams, number 1. Smart move by Todd Gurley to stop short of the goal line to secure, or I should say at least guarantee the win. And a lot of fantasy owners have had an issue with it, or Vegas bettors had an issue with it. I will say this: I had Todd Gurley in fantasy. I had absolutely no issue because how good he played previously in the game won me my fantasy matchup. If you had an issue with a guy not scoring a touchdown when he already scored that many points for you, then obviously you suck because the rest of your roster sucks. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.